Arcane Gateway. And the fact that I'm told it doesn't get better is very disheartening. If you're new to the Indie Spotlight, welcome. This is pretty much my chance to review and read books by indie authors. I myself am an indie author. My second book is coming out in a couple weeks here, or maybe just came out depending on when this video comes out. And that is Den of Sparrows. The first book, Tower of Dogs, came out in January. They are both YA fantasy dystopian, and the third book will be coming out next year if I can manage the beast. So welcome to the chaos that is Hail and Moon Studios. And it's time for me to talk about the first book in the His Name Was Augustin series, Arcane Gateway by C.L. Carhart. So the book we're talking about today is called Arcane Gateway, which is the first book in the His Name Is Augustin, His name was Augustin series by C.L. Carhart. This is pitched as a paranormal fantasy saga. Sure. I feel like romance should have slipped in there because literally the main character would not stop talking about the romance. It's kind of weird. Before I jump into my review and thoughts, let's read the synopsis together and get a feel for this book that I have so many opinions on. All of history is open to you now. You need only to choose which era you want to claim as your own. I've got enough magic going on in my life. It's tough to integrate with society when you can summon ice in the heat of summer, but now I'm charging ahead toward a normal life. I'm going to college, and then I'll work at my father's corporation. My ice magic can take a backseat for a while. Unfortunately, fate had other plans when it led me to a fairy, a gorge, and a demonic relic rumored to harbor the power over time itself. Great. Using this thing might go against my beliefs, but I have to protect it, if nothing else. And maybe along the way, I'll get brave enough to admit my feelings for Hans, my most trusted mentor. No problem that he's a Teuton priest, my father's accountant, and utterly uninterested in romance. What could go wrong? If you like dark paranormal fantasies with secret societies, forbidden love, time travel, and tough choices, this is for you. Arcane Gateway is full-length, 110k words, is book 1 of 6 in His Name Was Augustin series, and ends on a cliffhanger. Reader discretion, this book is recommended for adults due to sexual situations, profanity, and mature themes. Hey guys, if I'm here, I'm editing, and I have extra thoughts. I was just going through the synopsis part, and usually I just copy that from Goodreads or Amazon, and I figured either one's going to be the same, right? So I actually went to Goodreads this time, and the synopsis is written differently. It's written in third person rather than first, which is great because I still, in listening back, I did not like the Amazon synopsis. It also does not go into her, attraction with Hans. It doesn't touch on, any of the romance. I'm just going to read it really quickly and toss it in here so you can hear both versions, or you can also just go to the websites and read them and not listen to my voice. But here is the Goodreads version of that synopsis. All of history is open to you now. You need only to choose which era you want to claim as your own. Swanee von Thaden has enough magic going on in her life already. Having grown up in a Teutonic world rife with elemental powers, spiritual entities, and mystical traditions, she's never really integrated into everyday life. Now she's poised to enter college in a few weeks' time. There she'll need to fit in with normal people who could never fathom the magic she wields, but who would dare to befriend an elemental witch. During one last summer vacation, Swanee meets a fairy in the forest who leads her to a mysterious relic rumored to harbor the power over time itself. Her plans for a normal life spiral into the ground as she finds herself questioning everything her people hold dear. Now, with the help of her most trusted mentors, she must seek out darker truths than she had ever imagined. Is there more to her people's history than meets the eye? What sinister forces lurk in the shadows of Teutonic magic? Trigger warning, this novel contains adult content, including sexual assault, profanity, and discussion of suicide. To be perfectly honest, I had to stop myself from just saying false. It's twisting of the truth in the story, and it's very, very irritating, and I'm sure I let out those frustrations in the rest of the review, but if I feel like I have to come back, editing Hollow will be back. So back to the normal scheduled content that I'm editing. Wow. I hated that blurb. I've read over a dozen books this year, indie books, and that is the first blurb that irritated me while reading it. And I think it's, oh my god, it's in first person. Okay, let's break this down. So already in that first paragraph with the whole like, I got enough magic going on in my life, it's tough to integrate with society. Oof, girl, her magic was subdued as she was young. But pretty much when she's 13, she discovers she has this power. And then we get to skip over anything that she has to do with it, like training or learning about it, until she's like older and is talking with her girlfriends kind of about marriage and like going to college and growing up and stuff. You know what took a back seat was the entire magical and fantasy plot in this book. Yes, I'm going to take my robe and throw it on the ground because I'm getting already hot and bothered. In the not good way. In the not good way, this book did not do it for me. And the fact that she literally went over her whole like struggle with her feelings for Hans, who's the mentor and the accountant, and 30 plus years her senior, which of course that number isn't put in the blurb, but it is there. Also, I don't understand the point of putting the word count in your blurb. I don't think most people, like most readers, know that. That's more of a writer thing, in my opinion. And then the reader discretion for sexual situations, profanity, and mature themes. Pretty much all of that was one scene, which should have been cut anyway. So, let's jump into this book. Since The Savior's Champion, I have not been... which one makes me more frustrated? Maybe I'll figure that out by the time I finish this review. The book opens with Swanee, our main character. She's 13 and her father's having a house party, an adult house party. Like, obviously there were adults fooling around, but it didn't feel like a swinger party or anything like that where that's like the whole purpose of it. Maybe it was. I didn't get that impression. Regardless, her dad's like, no, you can't come down to the party. And she essentially sneaks out of her room to go like look at people and whatnot. And Hans, who is the mentor, the accountant, he kind of feels like a bodyguard / butler as well, just for the record. He comes up behind her and instead of just making her go back to her room and doing the right thing, he's like, hey, come out into the woods with me and we can dance. There's a lot that you can insinuate from such phrasing. However, he goes out to teach her about her Teutonic magic, which happens to be ice in this case. And they do actually like dance, which is whatever. It's still kind of weird because he is 30 years plus her senior. She's 13. He's in his 40s at that time. And she crushing hard on this boy. This man, not even a boy. You don't even get the boy label, sir. You are a man. Let me state, I don't have an issue with age gap romances in the sense of like period pieces. Because I know like in medieval times and whatever, you did have typically older nobles or whoever marrying a younger woman, make the babies, etc. Like, I get it. It was a thing. In this situation, very weird. And we're reminded by the character herself that she shouldn't be having these feelings. And it was weird that she liked an older man and that like they would never be able to get together. Her father would never approve. He would never even like her back, yada yada. So the fact that the main character is going through all of this only to go where we're going is so frustrating. Moving on, we do a time jump because we can't have too many important scenes in a row that actually build on the plot. So a lot of nothing happens in this first book for the majority of it. As Swanee gets older, she does start to socialize with more Teutonic girls. Her father has kind of closed up his life to that because her mother had died as a result of being a Teutonic woman and they have issues giving birth. Weird world building thing we're going to touch on. But her mother had died from it, so her father kind of blocked it out, which is why her powers were kind of hidden from her until now. And so Hans, who also has not told the father that, you know, he's helping her use her powers and build them. Takes her to their little community after church, and there's all these other girls who are also Teutons, and it's kind of like a little Winx Club get together where you have these 4 or 5 girls with different powers. Instead of us doing like a training sequence where we get to experience people's powers and see like what they get to learn and how they can use it in this society when they're supposed to be hiding it because it's not like a prevalent thing, obviously. And also they're just hiding it from everybody in general. No, instead of doing that, we're going to sit around and talk about sex and marriage. Particularly, there's a obsession with the percentage of Teuton blood. If you're over 75%, you have the potential to have powers, but like you're really not good enough unless you're over 85%. And of course Swanee is like, I'm 85 or whatever, like she's almost 90 or something. You can increase your Teuton blood purity, so increase that percentage of Teuton when you have sex with a Teuton of higher blood percentage. And I'm like, science, it don't work that way. Magic, you haven't backed it up for me to believe it works that way, because it's a weird. So yeah, all these relatively young girls are just talking about marriage and sex and like who their standards are and whatever. So it's very just chitty chatty girl talk, which the conversation itself I wasn't down for, because I'm like, y'all are getting way too serious, and like, is this really what girl talk is? Like, I didn't have a circle of girlfriends, but even my friends who were girls, like, this has not even yet become a topic, and I'm married, and we still don't talk about marriage, really. So they were definitely getting into that conversation, and I thought at least it was a nice look at her building some female friends, because there is a trope of like the lone female character where she doesn't have any female friends, or all the females are like competition. So I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna get some friends. This could be nice. For how the author writes, she doesn't write poorly, but she does a very good job at paying attention and making mundane things beautiful. And this isn't a good mundane like we had in Dead Skin Mask. This is literally like describing what clothes she's wearing and what food and smells, and going to a concert and her friends throwing up and some other friends getting with guys. Like, it's just, for half of the book, I think, we had not yet touched on the whole fairy gorge and the time stone, which is what she finds there. Hadn't touched the plot, because again, we didn't talk about her doing anything with her Teuton powers except for like going out onto the lake and dancing and having to hide herself. It was just too much of the non-interesting bits and the non-plot related bits for it to feel even purposeful. Because eventually she gets this time stone. She decides, I'm going to use it to go back and see my parents get married. Because there's some rules to it, like you can't go back to a time where you were already born, you can't go back further than when the stone existed, and it's actually something like she shouldn't even be using because it's sort of like more demonic magic. Yet Hans, our mentor, who is the ever the Swanee's heartthrob forever, no matter what, not necessarily encourages her, but allows her to do this and go back in time. And so that was her first trip back in time. She got to see them married and get a touch of the thing. And when she comes back, like through the portal, if you want to call it that, she hears these dark voices trying to like pull at her. So she's a little bit afraid of going back through it. Then she goes off to college. We get to hear about her going to classes and being away from all her Teuton friends and missing them. And I'm sure some other things happened that are irrelevant, but I remember there was a gap between her going to college and it must have been like sophomore year when the thing happened. So the important parts you need to know up until now are she has abilities that she cannot show off, so she's been keeping it secret. She does have female friends who also have these powers, but rather than us investigating that, we're just going to talk about marriage. She finds a time stone so she can travel through time, and she shouldn't be using it, but she goes to use it to see her parents get married, and then she is holding on to it because for some reason, even after she reveals it to like the village elder, that lady is like, no, you should hold on to it and keep it safe, or the priests will take it away from you. And Hans is one of the priests. Hans is not doing a good job. Like, he's a Teutonic priest, and one of Swanee's father's, like, trusted people. He's not doing a good job. And if all of that sort of summary sounds kind of directionless and maybe all over the place, it's because there doesn't feel like there is a direction in the book for almost till the end, to be fair. While it was not the worst reading experience, because the author does have some talent in writing, it was just writing the wrong parts. I'm not even breaking up this review the way that I typically do, because there's very little for me to not spoil, because this whole story could literally, you could probably cut it down to about 3 or 4 chapters and then jump into whatever book 2 is supposed to be. The part that irritates me the most, aside from our flat love interest, who Hans is literally there to be a love interest. Like, he doesn't really have much character. Like, the part that irritated me the most was chapter 25, which I will continuously state should be skipped and or removed from the book and edited out. It does not match the tone of the rest of the book at all. It is very graphic. It's an assault scene. The main character gets assaulted, and the plot reason is that a demon was possessing one of the guys who was part of the assault party and was looking for the time stone. Now, there was no interactions before with any of these men, or any other situations where a demon had tried to come after her or someone had tried to come after the stone. This literally came out of left field, and it went all the way to the field goal. It just kept going. I don't have any personal experience to speak of as far as what goes on when someone is being assaulted, but we have a character who has magic abilities, who has learned self-defense. She literally, like, has a conversation with her father where he's like, there's a training dummy down there so you can learn how to fight, because she makes a comment like, oh, like some of his business partners were coming on to her, and he's like, yeah, just go learn, just kick him in the groin. She has had some self-defense training to a point, or at least has been educated in that area. She has magic abilities. She takes everything, and we get some thoughts of her of like, she should scream, and I think she said should try to fight back, but there was nothing. She did nothing. For me, like, if somebody was trying to do something, they're gonna come out looking worse, because I'm not gonna let it happen. Or at least, I would die trying, kind of thing. Like, she did not. And I don't have personal experience to speak from in that case, but I almost felt insulted that she took it the way she did, and the fact that it was written so intensely. Now, I know there are situations where you can't fight back, or I guess victim guilt, where people assume like it happened to them for a reason or it was their fault. But Swanee is not that person. And there is no reason this scene should have happened or been written this way, because pretty much after all that, once she cleans herself up, she goes into spirit mode, punches one of the guys in the face, pushes another one off a 2-story balcony, so he breaks his back. And then the guy who's actually possessed, she leaves him alone because it wasn't his choice. He was being possessed. What? The character is notorious for making the worst decisions. Even before she finds the ferry in the gorge and stuff, and she's going out on her own, and she sees the river, and she's like, I really shouldn't do this by myself, or I shouldn't let my magic out. And then she does it anyway. What was your personal pep talk for? You did nothing with that. She has zero character growth. It may even be more negative because initially, because she's in love with Hans and everything, she doesn't have such a pretentious attitude about who she marries or hooks up with, but then it becomes very power hungry, where anybody who doesn't have better Teuton blood is not good enough for her. She is super selfish. Like the worst friend ever. So one of the girls who also has Teutonic powers and is like her friend, they're hanging out at Swanee's house. And she finds out that her friend Erica is a lesbian and has a girlfriend. And in their society, with the Teutons especially, like that's looked down upon, so she's kept it secret, right? And so Erica is over while they're having dinner, and it's just the three of them, so Swanee, Erica, and her dad. And her dad is like talking to Erica about her art and having a normal conversation with a person who is your guest. And Swanee gets jealous. And she literally calls Erica out at the dinner table, which makes the father uncomfortable. Erica is pissed because like she told Swanee that in secrecy. And just because Swanee's jealous, she's just throwing Erica under the bus. It's amazing that Erica is even friendly to her after that, because drop her like it's hot. I think that was the one time in the book where I actually wanted to defend a character. Otherwise, all the relationships are relatively superficial. We get more of her cousin Beth and their boyfriend, whose name is eluding me. We get more with her cousin and her boyfriend when she's in America, but they act like they have this strong relationship built up because they used to visit when Swanee was younger. When Beth comes into the picture, all the friends that Swanee had are basically out of the picture. One of them gets married and she's kind of worried about her because she believes she's in like an abusive marriage and has married just to produce children, which, as we mentioned earlier in this video, the Teutonic women have trouble giving birth, which is just a very, like, for as obsessed as they are about blood purity, who y'all be marrying and sexing with, the fact that they, like, the higher the blood purity, the more risk they have of, like, dying in childbirth is a thing. I'm just like, why is this world building a thing? It doesn't, for one, it doesn't seem natural that your body should be like, preserve our blood, preserve our culture, but also die. Like, what is that? But anyway, it acts like we have this relationship built up with Beth, and obviously her boyfriend comes in and Swanee likes him, but he's an okay guy, and she decides, of all the people to take back, when she decides to time travel again, and this time she's going further back in time to before the Teutonic Empire fell, she decides to take the two non-Teutonic people in her life, which is, her cousin and her cousin's boyfriend, instead of any of the Teuton girls. And for whatever reason, Beth agrees to it. Bad idea. And then they don't even tell Beth's boyfriend until they are leaving. From what I've been told, the point of them like going through the time portal to travel back to whatever century was supposed to be the end of this book, and then the second book picks up when they get there. I think that should have stayed that way because it felt like it should have ended there. It was written to be an ending. However, at least in my version, which I guess is updated, we get several more chapters of when they get through the portal. Very quickly, guess who gets killed off? Beth. We're just gonna kill off Beth. And when you get killed, when you travel back in time, you actually just you come back to the original time. So she doesn't die, but we literally just kill her off. So it's just Swanee and the boyfriend in this place. And I cannot honestly tell you much of what happens after that. I know it was too many chapters into what should have been book 2 and like building up a new plot. But it was very weak because your only tension was them like trying to escape from these gypsies, which I also question the characterization of the gypsy. I don't know what the history between actual like Teutons and gypsies are, but we were painting the gypsies in a very negative light. Even I, who am a not sensitive person to like societal political correctness stuff, I was just like, you're coming off strong there on the gypsy bit. She and the boyfriend like find a place to get jobs, and then again, there's a mystery or something building up. It was just so, I was just so over this book that at that point I was like, why are we starting a whole new story now? And then it ends randomly. The ending just ruined it even more. The author has potential. The going into the Teuton history and kind of melding this relationship with magic and Christianity, again, like the history as well, and then throwing it into this teenage girl who is the worst. The worst. Not that every main character has to be like a good guy and likable, but Swanee is just rough to read. Beautiful descriptions of stuff that doesn't matter. Like, I would have loved to see, again, the struggles we have with the magic, since this is a fantasy and it's labeled a paranormal fantasy, but the paranormal I'm barely getting. Like, is it the demons in the time travel thing? Because I really think you just wrote a romance or a fantasy. You wrote a time travel fantasy with romance because you obsessed with Hans. I've heard we're going to get obsessed with someone else, but that's whatever. This is the type of book that you just want to do better. Is it more or less disappointing than The Savior's Champion? Honestly, this might be, for reading experience, with the exception of the assault scene and what tied to that, I'd say it was at least more enjoyable because it was relatively easy to read. I actually had my Kindle play it and read it to me, and it was very easy to listen to and follow. And like I said, the author does describe things very well, so that part was enjoyable, but it was like, what is this plot even? That's kind of where The Savior's Champion wins, where, like, you know, the plot is to win the tournament to marry the Savior, and then the whole, like, twist with Tobias and Layla already falling in love. The Savior's Champion at least has plot direction and some sort of structure, whereas this book has just a slightly more enjoyable reading experience because we weren't just cussing and belittling with locker room talk, as they call it, every, like, 5 seconds. However, both of them, the romance, not great. Oh God. And if they're marketing this with, again, hers didn't say romance, but I know that has to be part of their marketing because she mentioned it in the blurb, the whole, like, her forbidden love with Hans. There was really no character relationships. Like, for the most part, Hans is a flat character who is written to be the love interest, to have these, like, nice little moments of he, like, makes tea and takes care of her and looks good in his priestly robes or whatever. But he doesn't do his job as a priest as he should with her. He doesn't really, aside from, like, sort of telling her not to do stuff and introducing her to the Teutonic magic, he doesn't really help or guide at all. He's there to be the pretty older forbidden love. Like, it's a father-daughter or, like, uncle, or it's just not romantic. And the fact that they kiss and then he's like, oh shoot, I did the thing, and he ghosts her for a while. Why did you do that? We did not need that. We did not need a lot of things in the end of this book. Just skip to the next one. I've not yet decided if I'm going to suffer through that. I did promise Ian. I did promise you I would read it so we can discuss this tragedy. Gosh, and I'm sorry, like, usually I try to keep my reviews relatively structured and organized, and this was just impossible. Every time I thought of a part that was either should have been plot or as a character flaw, it just spiraled. It just spiraled into whatever. Like, if you could point out a novel that was pantsed and not edited back through, or like fan fiction, it felt like fan fiction because it was writing all the coffee shop scenes, like the boring daily stuff instead of doing the plot, and so the plot goes in the background. So yeah, if you just want to read some words, it's there. It's rough, especially, like I said, from a little over halfway, it kind of plummets in its readability. That is my terrible recap of Arcane Gateway by C.L. Carhart. Ian, I blame you, but also I did pinky swear, so I will get through the other books in the near future, not now, because I need a break. I need a break from that, and I also need to do some writing because book 3 is coming out next year, so we actually need to put some work in on that. I think if there's anything else to say about this book, it would have to be like a question and answer to kind of narrow down all the issues. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them below. Also, if you would like to recommend an indie book that maybe is not so bad, that'd be great. I need it. I need it soon. Right now, I'm actually reading Order of the Spirits by Vladimir, and it's interesting so far. It is definitely a different tone. We're getting a little more of fantasy action, what I'm used to. So it's a nice little palate cleanser, and thank you for that. I did need that. So I will be reading and reviewing that one next for the Indie Spotlight, but definitely leave your suggestions in the comments below. Depending on when you're seeing this video, Tower of Dogs may still be on sale. If not, then Den of Sparrows is out. So you can check out the 2 books in my series. There's a 4-chapter preview on my website. Check all that out. And if you like fantasy, that actually delves into fantasy, I do that. Okay, we're just gonna end this because it's not gonna get better. Whenever we talk about the series, come around for that, because maybe we'll have some sense of order. See you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.